Welcome back to the Humble Market Timer YouTube channel. Once again, if you enjoy the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. In today's video, I want to delve deeper into silver and look at how we could project the price action as we move forward into 2026. And I want to project the price action utilizing the gold and silver ratio chart because it was so instrumental in pointing out a top, at least in the short term, for silver. Before I go any further, please check the description and my disclaimer. Once again, these are my sole ideas, not investment advice. Now, as I have mentioned in several of the other videos that I've done, I thought that the gold and silver ratio chart would be key in determining the top for silver. And again, when I say top, I mean in the short term. We looked at several different things and we came to the conclusion after analyzing the charts and looking for confluence that 58 area would be a good spot for where we would see a top in silver. We sort of learned that when you saw bottoms in the gold and silver ratio, that also corresponded with tops in silver. So we utilized that analysis and broke down the charts and we came up with that. And so what I want to do now is projecting into 2026. What are the levels we could see the gold and silver ratio drop to where silver can make even bigger highs? So before we go further in this technical analysis, let's look at the silver chart. And the main thing I want to show on the silver chart is these two peaks right here. These were the last two times in which silver had its peak at about that $50 range. And that happened to be here in about that 1979, 1980 time frame. And then over here in 2011. So those are two key areas that I want to also find in the gold and silver ratio chart so we can again pinpoint some levels that we could see the gold and silver ratio dropping to. And with that, you would then see also huge price pops in silver. So going back to the gold and silver ratio, let's draw some parallels. This is that 1980 time frame. I wanted to mark it there, and then also this happened to be around that 2011 time frame. So these are the two areas that I really wanted to pinpoint in drawing these parallels. And let's kind of stretch this out to here. Let's adjust this a little bit. Adjust this down just a little bit. Move this up a little bit here. And I think that represents a pretty decent parallel where we're utilizing the lows in the gold and silver ratio, and we stretched it out to about the highs of the gold and silver ratio. And so, we talked about this line was a key line that we had to hold, that I thought we would get to in the gold and silver ratio. And, looking down here at the RSI, you can see that we are probably due for a bounce. But then as you kind of look at the environment for silver, if we know about China having these restrictions moving forward in 2026, if we truly see restrictions and there truly is a shortage in silver, you could really see that gold to silver ratio drop and really see those silver prices spike. But I think just based on this chart and this parallel, if we do happen to fall below this line, I think the first area that you can see or kind of project the gold to silver ratio to go to would be right down here, which would be in that 42-ish gold and silver ratio range. So that would be a pretty substantial drop from that 58. I think we got as low as about 54 in the gold and silver ratio. But I think that would be probably your first level of a possible drop in the gold and silver ratio if we were to pierce this line even further. So that's one number range that you want to kind of, I say price, I don't want to say price target, but it's actually just a number range because it's a ratio that you want to look for in the gold to silver ratio. So that's one. Let's delete that and let's look at another parallel. Let's look at this parallel here, and this is a parallel that I pointed out when we were initially developing where we thought the gold and silver ratio could fall. As you can see here, I think this is a good parallel. Again, I've talked about this in other videos. You see a great midpoint action right here where that acted as resistance. You got tops and bottoms, great midpoint. So when you have this area, the next thing you would like to see is, again, if this area doesn't hold, and we're looking at this, when you're trying to project with a measured move, the midpoint replaces the bottom of the parallel. So if we were to do that and move this down, so they actually replace the bottom of the parallel, we get to about right there. And if you notice, if we come all the way down here, that gets you to about the 25 area for the gold and silver ratio. So we talked about it getting to about 42. And then you have this area down here, which would be about 25. If we have, again, massive shortage, China is buying up all the silver they can get their hands on. India is buying up all the silver they can get their hands on. And supply is tight. I don't see why we can't go all the way down here to that 25-ish range. And if we get down there, you're talking about massive move in the price of silver. One other area that I think you might be able to pay attention to is if you zoom out here and then you also draw a line here. This has been a low right in this area, and you see that that has some level of lots of hits in that area as well. That is in about that 30 range. So that 30 area may also be a potential spot for the gold and silver ratio to go to. If again we start seeing these massive shortages in silver. So based on technical analysis, we're seeing that if we break below this line, and again that might be a tough line to break, but again the shortages are there, we could go lower. The first area you want to look for is about 43. Then you could drop, if that doesn't hold, I think you could drop to 30 at this line. And then if that doesn't hold, you could possibly fall all the way to about 25 in this area way down here. So those are the areas I think you can look for. I think, again, if we hit that 30 and 25-ish area, look to sell your firstborn, take out a second mortgage on your house, you're going to see some massive rises in the price of silver. You'll see massive rises in the price of these miners, and silver will be the talk of the world. Now that also may signal some other negative things, because as the price of silver goes up, there may be some other casualties to go along with it, but that would be a massive achievement for silver. Again, a precious metal that has been suppressed for many years. It would not surprise me if we saw those crazy projections that you hear people talk about when you talk about those 100, 150, 200, $300 silver price ranges if we were to get the gold to silver ratio all the way down into the 20s and 30s. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the gold to silver ratio. Keep an eye on silver. Once again, if you like the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.